There's a specific kind of person who remembers that you mentioned in passing 3 months ago that you don't like cilantro. They remember the name of your coworker you complained about once. They remember which mug you reached for without thinking. Most people write this off as a nice quirk, a good memory, maybe just attentiveness. But there's something deeper happening here, and once you understand it, you'll never look at the detail rememberers in your life the same way again. Let's get something out of the way first. This isn't really about memory in the conventional sense. It's not that these people have better recall for phone numbers or grocery lists. Ask them to remember a string of digits and they might do exactly average. What's actually happening is something psychologists call selective encoding. The brain's tendency to store information more deeply when it's tagged as emotionally or socially relevant.
For most people, that tagging system runs on a fairly narrow set of triggers, mostly things that affect them directly. For detail rememberers, the tagging system runs on something else entirely. It runs on you. Here's what that actually means in practice. When most people listen to someone talk, they're processing for relevance to themselves, waiting for their turn to relate it back to their own experience. Detail rememberers process differently. They're building a model of the other person, almost without meaning to, cataloging preferences, patterns, small contradictions, the things that make someone specifically who they are, rather than a generic version of a person. The cilantro thing isn't stored because it's important information. It's stored because it's a piece of you, and some part of their brain has decided you're worth that kind of attention. Let's pause here and unpack something important, because this trait has a complicated origin story.
For a lot of people who do this, it didn't start as generosity.
It started as survival. Children who grow up needing to track a caregiver's moods, who learn to notice tiny shifts in tone or body language because their environment demanded it, develop this same skill, just aimed at threat detection instead of affection. The mechanism is identical. The motivation is completely different. Someone who learned this skill out of necessity in childhood often carries it forward into adulthood. Except now, there's no danger to track, just an overdeveloped capacity for noticing that's looking for somewhere to go. It's worth pausing on just how strange this transfer actually is. The nervous system doesn't really distinguish between noticing a parent's mood shift to stay safe and noticing a friend's favorite coffee order to make them feel cared for. Both rely on the exact same underlying machinery, sustained, fine-grained attention to another person's patterns. What changes entirely is the emotional charge underneath it. One version of this skill runs on quiet dread. The other runs on quiet devotion. From the outside, both can look identical. A person who simply seems to notice everything. This is actually one of the more fascinating things about this trait. The exact same cognitive skill, remembering small specific details about another person, can come from two completely opposite places. One person developed it because love in their household looked like being truly seen, so they learned to offer that same gift to others. Another developed it because not noticing in their household was dangerous. Same behavior, wildly different roots. And often, the person doing it has no idea which version applies to them. Here's a pattern interrupt worth sitting with. Think about someone in your life who remembers small things about you. Now think about how that actually makes you feel. For most people, the answer is immediate and visceral. It feels like being known. That feeling, that specific warmth, is actually one of the most underrated forms of intimacy that exists, and it costs the other person nothing but attention. Let's talk about why this trait matters so much relationally, because the research here is genuinely interesting. Studies on responsiveness in relationships have found that feeling understood by a partner or friend, not just supported, but genuinely understood, is one of the strongest predictors of relationship satisfaction across long-term studies. And understanding isn't built from grand gestures, it's built almost entirely from these small, accumulated moments. Someone remembering how you take your coffee, noticing you seem off before you've said anything, recalling a detail from a story you told once and never repeated. There's also a cost to being this kind of person that doesn't get talked about enough. Holding all this information about other people takes up real cognitive and emotional space. Detail rememberers often describe feeling slightly invisible in return, not because people don't care about them, but because most people simply aren't running the same kind of tracking system. They give this specific, detailed kind of attention and receive a more generic kind back. And over time, that asymmetry can feel quietly lonely, even in relationships that are otherwise warm and reciprocal. It also tends to create a strange dynamic where detail rememberers become the unofficial emotional historians of their friend groups and families. They're the one who remembers what was actually said during an old argument, who knows which anniversary is coming up, who notices when someone's been a little distant for the past 2 weeks.
This role is rarely assigned.
It's simply absorbed, often without anyone, including the person doing it, fully realizing how much invisible labor it actually involves. Over time, it can start to feel less like a gift freely given and more like a quiet, unpaid job nobody else applied for. There's a flip side worth mentioning too, because not every detail rememberer experiences this as a burden. For some, the noticing itself is the reward. There's a genuine satisfaction in being able to surprise someone with a small, specific kindness. Showing up with their favorite snack without being asked, or referencing a story from months ago that makes the other person feel unexpectedly seen. For these people, the trait isn't depleting at all. It's one of their primary ways of expressing affection. A kind of love language built entirely out of attentiveness rather than grand gestures. Here's something worth naming directly, because it reframes the whole trait. Remembering small details about someone isn't really about the details at all. The cilantro, the mug, the co-worker's name, none of that matters on its own. What matters is what the remembering communicates. You registered as significant enough to be tracked. In a world full of surface-level interaction, where most people are only half listening while waiting for their turn to speak, being truly tracked by another mind is rare enough to feel almost startling when you encounter it. So if you're someone who does this, here's the thing worth understanding about yourself. This isn't a small personality quirk. It's a form of care that operates below the level of conscious effort, and it's worth recognizing as the gift that it actually is, rather than something you do automatically and therefore discount.
And if you're the kind of person who's been on the receiving end of this, who's had someone remember the small things about you without being asked to, that's worth naming too. Not everyone gets that. Most people don't. Tell me in the comments if you're a detail rememberer, or if you know someone who is. And if this describes someone in your life who's never been thanked for it properly, this might be a good excuse to finally tell them what it actually means to you.